What a pleasure for the Kiros Report, which typically brings in academics, activists of all kinds, professionals from all spectrum of life. But this time, the Kiros Report is going to do something special. The Kiros Report is going to present you the Chief of Police in Melrose, a position that he has occupied since December 2022. This is the Chief of Police, Mr. Kevin Fallier, with 25 years of service with the Medford PD, in which he held the rank of captain, and prior to leaving, ran the Detective Division for 11 years. Internal Affairs Division for 4 years, and Patrol Division for 3 years. He could proudly list among his numerous achievements that he has a master's degree in criminal justice from Anna Maria College, a bachelor's degree from the well-known university, Tufts University, in psychology. And he is currently also an instructor for the Municipal Police Training, Legal Update, and frontline leadership for current police officers across the Commonwealth. Quite a position. 20 years of residence in Melrose, the beautiful city of Melrose, a city that I truly love. He has a wife and 2 daughters. I've had the honor, as his very close neighbor, to have met his incredible wife and his lovely 2 daughters. I also met his brother, who is a doctor, chief of pathology. In fact, the original plan was to bring you 2 chiefs, the chief of police and the chief of pathology, a dream that did not take root, but it might happen in the near future. He enjoys, among many, many other things, playing keyboards, piano. He's a member of original and cover bands, golf and hockey in his spare time. He's the son of a Filipino immigrant, a retired physician, dad, Cito, I think, whom, again, I had the honor to have met him at one of his family parties, his daughter's graduation, a wonderful doctor. And I also met one of his siblings, namely the chief of pathologists, who was supposed to be a co-guest, as I said. And he has 2 sisters whom I also met, who are nurses. So it's incredible, an incredible bio, which tells a story that the chief of police did not follow, namely this. It appears that beginning with his father's training and further followed by these siblings, there seems to be an incredible interest in medicine in the household, with accolades of all kinds. But the chief of police decided to choose a different vocation. I'm just wondering why. When did this interest begin? When did you decide to consider being a policeman? Let's begin there. Take your
Yeah,
time and tell us
absolutely.
the story.
Sure. And thank you, Tedros, for having me on. Uh, we've known each other, but I'm glad to finally make the cut on the show. Unfortunately, Gary, my brother, couldn't be here, but maybe we'll do that between the ferns with 2 chiefs at someday. I've been asked that question before. Obviously, my whole family, my immediate siblings, are all in the medical profession. My dad was a physician. My mom was great as well, taking care of us growing up and just keeping the house together while dad was out working and so forth. But pretty standard. Like when I was a kid, I always wanted to be. I was very active. You can ask my mom. You can ask my dad. I was the youngest of 4. I always was. I guess they'd say it was a challenge, but I always wanted to play cops and robbers. Always watched all the TV police shows. Always was a member of sports teams, like being part of a team like that. That was like the biggest thing with me, was being part of a team with a uniform. All right. I still wear a uniform. I'm 53. I've been wearing uniforms my whole life. But it seriously considered it, obviously when I hit college. And as you referenced, I went to Tufts University, great school, had a great time there. And I remember to this day, my dad saying, "Well, what are you going to do when you graduate?" And as a 17-year-old kid starting college, you don't think of that. You just think it's an extension of high school. And I'm just going to play hockey in college and I'm just going to party and have fun. But now that I'm older and I talk to my children whom you've met, college is not that. It's what are you preparing for when you get out of that? Why would you spend all this kind of money? And we know how expensive it is. So somewhere in college, I started, well, psychology is great. I love it. That's why I've majored in it. But really, what am I going to do with that? I'd have to go another 6 years or so, maybe to get my master's and then maybe go into that. And that's when I seriously started thinking I wanted to be a police officer or just specifically law enforcement. And I started taking an interest in federal law enforcement. Quite honestly, I wanted to be an FBI agent. I wanted to be a Secret Service agent or an ATF agent. So I started taking those tests my senior year. And it was unfortunately, it was a time where they weren't hiring a lot. I don't know. There was some budgetary issues at the federal level, did very well in all the entrance exams. The FBI required a law degree at the time. So that was kind of like, okay, well, I'd have to go to law school. So then I took the local police exam in Medford, where I started my career while I was in college. And literally just the timing was great. I did very well on the exam. And right out of college, I worked for a little bit in the hospital lab. So I was moving into the medical profession. I worked in the pathology lab. And then Medford called, and the federal government called me a little bit later when I was in the police academy with Medford. And by then I was committed. And, I try to stay loyal, and it's where I grew up actually in Medford. So college was when I seriously started looking, but it'd behoove me, or I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize my Uncle Earl, my mom's brother. He was a long-time police officer down in Prince George's County in Maryland. Tough neighborhood. Would only see him once a year. And he'd come up and he would tell these war stories, as they would say, right? And I just, as a little kid, I would listen to them. I looked at him as a role model, and it was something I wanted to do. And my other uncle was a police officer for the Metropolitan Police that used to exist back in Massachusetts. So I had some immediate family members on my mom's side who were law enforcement, and I kind of gravitated that way versus the medical side. But I say it to this day, and Tedros, you know this, it's all helping. It's all a service profession, right? Nurses, doctors, they're helping people. They're saving lives. Different kind of way they save lives, but policing is the same thing. It's a service profession. My family was very tight. My mom and dad, did a great job, even though I was a challenge. But they instilled the values in us of helping people, and that's where it started.
I see. Well, at the expense of embarrassing you, because you're quite humble. I've been observing you for a few years now. Very calm, as I told it, your face, which I find to be remarkable, because calmness is the bedrock, is the foundation for getting the best out of people if you approach them calmly and suspend your judgment. I have noticed that trait in you, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is a background that is a blend of your training in psychology and interest in the human mind.
Yeah. I mean, you can, as you know, you're a professor yourself, right? You can be textbook smart, book smart, read every lesson plan, and do well on tests. It doesn't translate to real life, So, fortunately, I think the training that I did receive in school and schooling, and I absorbed it, I learned it, but some of that stuff, like real life common sense, real life, just the ability to talk to people, the ability to deal with people. That's not something you can teach too often. You either kind of have it or you don't. And, I'm trying to be humble. Like I don't, again, I go back to my family, we had our battles like every family has, but, I think we were brought up pretty well, and we were brought up, my dad was a doctor. Let's be frank. I had a good life. It wasn't much I didn't get when I was young. I was a little spoiled brat, but they instilled the values that now I look back, and maybe at the time I didn't, that how lucky I was, how fortunate we were as kids. And then you look at some of the people around you, some of the people that don't have it, and you say, geez, I wish I could have done things differently. And that's kind of how I want to be as an adult. I want to be as a dad. I want to be as a chief of police, to try to instill that in the people that work for me, that, there's people out there that have some real problems. You think you may have some problems. There's always something worse, and you got to come to work every day and empathize, sympathize, just try to put yourself in their position. Granted, we're going to have bad days, we're going to make mistakes, but we got to hire the right people, and maybe that's a further conversation down the line, but you have to hire the right people that have that sort of already instilled in them, and then train them in the other things. I read something today that really stood out. It's kind of a mantra of hiring and recruitment. It was like, you hire for attitudes, but you can train for skill. And that's exactly what we try to do here in policing, especially in Melrose, is hire the right people, promote the right people who have the right attitudes, the right heart, the right head. We can always train you to shoot. We can train you to do defensive tactics, but if you don't have that attitude, that person, that sort of innate compassion, you're probably not going to work out well, at least under my command, because you have to be empathetic. You have to have that emotion, or just recognize the emotion.
It's remarkable, Kevin. And again, at the expense of embarrassing you, I could attest to this empirically, because I have had a few human encounters with some of the police who work for you. And what is remarkable is each and every one of them is just well behaved. Because typically, and I'm not the only one, many people attest to this. I've always wondered why it is that when I see a police car, I feel nervous, I feel unease, and yet I don't know who these people are. And yet I feel uncomfortable, as confident as I am as a human being. When a police car passes by me, suddenly I'm not the confident Tedros. I worry, I'm anxious, I assume things. I feel as if they're going to stop me and ask me unpleasant questions, so forth and so on. I don't feel this way in Melrose. I've been in Melrose now close to 9 years, and this is homage to the policemen whom I have met. They have never mistreated me. I have never felt uneasy. I have never felt anxious. I even put my hands on them sometimes, even with with their official clothes on. I treat them as a human being, and I have never felt rebuffed. They respond accordingly, which gave me an opportunity, which I also share with some of my students, that we shouldn't stereotype the police, cops. They're human beings exactly like us, and yet we do. And as a student in psychology, I want you to break this down for me. Why is it that human beings unnecessarily feel unease in front of cops? Is it the cops' fault, or is it those who are being stopped who are unnecessarily becoming defensive? Break that down for me and educate me.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the positive experience that you've had. And again, I've only been in Melrose for a couple of years as the chief, but I've been here for 20 years. And I just want to emphasize too, when I came from Medford, I came from an awesome department. I didn't want to leave. The opportunity just presented itself to work in the community in which I live now. My kids grew up, and I never would have left Medford. That I had a great job. My friends even joke around, "Why did you leave Medford? You had the easiest job in the world," which wasn't true. But they maybe because the men and women made my job easy, just like it is here. I never would have left a comfortable position that I was there for almost 28 years unless I knew I was walking into a building of good people, and certainly a city of good people. I knew the city was great because I lived here for 20 years. But the police officers, I only knew a handful of them, and I did my research, right? Just like anyone who was looking for a job, you got to do your research on the company that you'd be moving into. And I never would have came here if I didn't know what you just said, right? That the police officers are doing a good job. The police officers in Melrose treat people with respect. Because why would I do that? Why would I leave something that's comfortable to me to go into something that's uncomfortable? But I guess to answer your question, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, quite honestly, Tedros. I feel uncomfortable when I drive by some police officers still doing this for 30 years. It's always like, are they going to pull me over? I'm in my own car. They don't know who I am. And I'm not certainly one of those guys. I wear my uniform, I go home and take it off. Sometimes I say it's a costume more than it is a uniform. I'm a person. I'm Kevin Fallier. I'm not chief of police. So if I unfortunately do get pulled over, or if I encounter one, and I'm not testing, but that's kind of a weird thing. When I interact with other police officers who don't know who I am, I just be myself. And it's not a game, but I also want to see how they treat me, not knowing I'm a chief of police, because I want to gauge
Yes.
how are they? What's this person like? Because I preach it again and again and again. I always say this to our new guys: you put the uniform on, you're not a tough guy. And we shouldn't be tough guys out there. That's not our role. This gun and a badge does not make you tough. The biggest weapon we have is our brain and our mouths. That's how you're going to get home safely to your wife and children every night. Granted, there's horrible things that happen to us that your brain and your mouth isn't going to stop you from getting hurt. But I'm a small guy. You see me, right? You might not tell on the TV, but I'm a little guy. In 30 years, I can count on, very, very minimal times if I've had to roll around with someone, I get physical with someone, because myself and my longtime partner that I had, in my previous job when I was working the streets, we had a great relationship together. We had a great rapport with anyone who we encountered. We didn't treat them like jerks. And generally, you get back what you give, right? If you treat people with respect, generally, you usually get that. You can't walk in and escalate a situation. You have to de-escalate. And we do all that training. It's constant training every year with de-escalation tactics. So training is very important. But why people feel uncomfortable, I mean, let's not beat around the bush. There's been some bad incidents over the years with police officers, whether it's, if it's racially motivated, if it's not racially motivated. There's been some bad press, and there's been some legitimate bad press. But what I would like to say is some of it was not legitimate, right? And I feel like a majority of us police officers felt the brunt of some mistakes of a few. And in Melrose, I remember speaking to some of the politicians locally when I got hired and when I was going through the process. And I don't remember which politician I spoke to, but it was something to the effect of, what can I do to help you in the city? And I said something just kind of simply, let me do my job. Let the policemen do their job. They're doing a good job. And do not judge us for the mistakes and the improprieties of somewhere outside of Massachusetts, down south, out west, somewhere far away. Let me do my job. Let me control what I control, which is 56 West Foster Street, the police station. We have good people. We train well. We have good leadership. We have good officers. Don't be misconstrued or don't think that that's happening here. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't proactively try to prevent it from happening here, but don't take it out on us for the ones that are doing a good job. That's kind of what my whole theory is really in leadership, and trying to do what's best for the people now that work for me is to advocate for them and to say, there is going to be problems. There's going to be large scale problems across the country when an officer does something wrong, but don't take it out on Melrose Police. Trust us, have conversations with us, ask us about policies, meet with us, have stuff like this, these type of shows and podcasts and MMTV. I think you may know, Tedros, we did start a podcast called Behind the Badge, where I'm trying to get a little bit more community engagement, bring some of our officers on, talk about where they come from, what do they do, just to learn about us as police officers, but more importantly, us as people. We're not bad people. We're just in a job that has had some black eyes and some scars.
All right. Now, this is, of course, not in your domain. I had asked this question to the prospective mayors when they were running for the mayorship. This question about diversity, which, as you can sense, has not been acted on yet. Melrose is not sufficiently diversified. Suppose that it were to be diversified, and in that people who look like me would begin to be many. I wonder if policing would change at that point. If the fact that we're fantastic policemen and women under your brilliant leadership, a function of the fact that Melrose is not sufficiently diversified, therefore peaceful, or could it be otherwise if diversity becomes a reality in Melrose? I just want you to speculate with me. It's a speculative question.
Yeah. So I've met with several groups right as soon as I got hired, and it's all about education as far as diversity or lack thereof, if you want to say it, maybe on the police department to reflect, I believe there's 30,000 residents in Melrose, roughly 8% is Asian. I think about 3% is African American of color, and the rest white, and, a few other mixed in between, right? So could we have 8% Asian on the police department? There's 50 of us, that's 4. Here's what I say to that. I have a responsibility to hire the most qualified candidates. And if I can accomplish that at the same time of diversifying the department, then that's a win-win for everybody. But what I had told one group, and it was, I shouldn't say it was surprising they didn't know. So we're a civil service community for hiring. And I don't think I don't think you know the process behind that, but
No.
the way police and fire and the public safety, and a lot of communities are like this. This is Massachusetts. You take an exam, and if you top the exam, you're at the top of the list, right? There's some preferences for military. You get some preference points. But all Melrose residents, if you're a Melrose resident, go to the top of the list. So, for example, if we had 200 people, well, across the Commonwealth, say there were thousands of people that took the test. When they take the test, your hometown in which you live, you get residential preference, meaning if you took the test, Tedros, as a Melrose resident, you got an 82 on a written score, you'd be above someone that was, say, in Wakefield who got a 90. So there's residential preference. That's first and foremost. Civil service guidelines only allow cities and towns to hire by a mathematical formula. So if we were hiring one officer, one vacancy, the mathematical formula is always 2n plus 1. So n would be the 1, 2 times 1 is 1 plus 1, 3. So what that means is if one officer, you have to hire one person out of the top 3 candidates. You cannot go down to 7, 8, 9, 10 on the list. So for this diversity example, let's say the top 3 people were white, and number 8 or number 9 and number 10 were of a different race, a black male or an Asian female. By statute and by law, we can't just skip to get to number 8. We have to go by the rule of 2n plus 1. Now, I, as a chief, can bypass candidates for disqualifications, right? It doesn't mean I have to hire the guy on the top score or the woman on the top score. If they have a criminal record, we do thorough background checks. If they're just not suitable, or if they have disqualifiers, then and only then can we bypass them and get down to that lower list. So how do we solve that in Melrose? It's recruitment and community engagement to try to get that population that may have not been represented as much as maybe the city would like or people would like, to get them to take the test, to get them to trust us, to get them who historically may not have wanted to become a police officer to now take the test. So our pool of applicants is more diversified, and diversity could be by race. I look at it in a larger picture as far as diversity, backgrounds, sex, age, race, just everything. But if we're going to talk about sort of people of color and Asians and whites and so forth, we need to recruit them. We need to recruit them, make them want to become police officers. We need to be role models. We need to be in the schools more often. You can't be a police officer until you're 21. So we got to hit that age group in high school, junior high school, middle school. So by the time they're eligible to take the exam and become a police officer in the city of Melrose, they've had so many positive experience with us that they want to become a police officer. But I'll go back to what I first said. I have a responsibility to hire the most qualified candidate. And I'd love to get that. And I'll tell you right now, Tedros, I got a group of 4 in the academy that whatever the definition of diversified, they're diversified. And they came right off that civil service list, the way we're bound. And it's great because they're the most qualified, they're the most diverse, and it flowed the way that we would want it to flow. So we're moving in that direction.
I appreciate that. And now let's characterize the differences and similarities of policing in Medford and Melrose. What are the similarities and what are the differences relative to the demography, the population, neighborhoods, income, wealth, just restricted to these few characteristics? Take your time and try to educate me.
Yeah. I mean, policing is policing, right? We joke around sometimes. We say same circus, different clowns, right? You go from one agency to another. You could have an agency of 10 people, 10 officers. You could go have an agency of 100 plus, when Medford had 100 plus officers that worked, with me and for me. And its core, policing is the same. I think the biggest difference when I came over from Medford to here was the call volume, the volume of calls. Certainly, you come from a city that's more city-like. I guess I would say it's big. I was just telling this to someone the other day. When I was a street sergeant, being the only sergeant on the street, I'd be up in North Medford, on the Malden line, and I'd get a call in South Medford on the Somerville line. That wasn't easy to get to. That wasn't quick to get to, and especially if it was during rush hour. It's a big city. I forget what the population is. It's probably close to 80 to 90,000 now, probably 3 times as big as us, with very varying demographics, almost even by neighborhood. But you had South Medford near Somerville, you had West Medford near Arlington, you had where I grew up near the Malden line. So certain areas were a little bit busier than others, but it really prepared me for the job that I'm in now, because there wasn't much that I didn't do. As far as crime goes, as far as like the experience of investigating crimes and responding to crimes, anywhere from homicides to, the lesser ones. But in Melrose, it's less volume, but it's the same. It's like we respond to the same stuff. It just might not be as often. And that's what I hope I brought here and can continue to bring here when we have major incidents of stuff that might not occur as much, to at least kind of help them if they need the help. But we've had a few in my short time here. That.
Yes, very well.
And very impressed with the way. And there was one major call, and I mean, I think that some of the officers, I think there were 3. We only have 3 or 4 officers on the street. That's a big difference for me. We had 10 or 12 on the street, and now we have 3. But it's a major call. A major call in Medford is a major call in Melrose, and we only had 3 guys on the street, 3 men and women. And I was very impressed on how they handled it. And some of them only had a year on the job, and the supervisors did a great job, because I don't come in here, and that's what I always say, even when I teach. I'm not an expert. I can only bring my training and experience, but I don't have all the answers. And the few major incidents we've had here, I wasn't sitting back watching and testing them, but I was sitting back watching to see, how do they handle it here? Because I have to learn from them just as much as they have to learn from me. And then we've always, I shouldn't say we always, but the few major ones we have what's like, I guess I call it a debrief, where everybody who went to the call comes in and meets in my office, and rank goes out the window. And we just go right down the line. What went well? What didn't go well? How can we make it better the next time? And that's really the only way you can improve pretty much in everything in life, right? Is sit back when something happens and say, and have the humbleness, if that's even a word, humility, to say, yeah, you know what? I'm going to do it better next time. So really the big difference, Tedros, is the call volume. But similar calls, just less of them.
Less of them. All right. And now, a close reading of your bio reveals you consistent with your eloquence, with your willingness to speak and speak well. in detail, is that you're an academic. You're interested in teaching, in instructing, like me. I feel as if I'm speaking to a fellow teacher. Similar passions, respect for language, respect for details, willingness to speak confidently and honestly, so on and so on. So, what is the content of the kinds of trainings that you're giving? What are you trying to teach?
So I teach for the MPTC, which is a Municipal Police Training Commission. It's something like that. It's the MPTC. And what the MPTC is, it's funny that I'm forgetting the acronym. It's the teaching. It's the commission that oversees all instruction, right from the academy level through in-service for police officers across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So they oversee the very first day when a recruit goes into the academy and goes to a 6-month academy and has to graduate, making sure they're trained by all the standards that we have to follow. And then after that, a lot of people don't know the extensive amount of training. Once you're sworn officers, in order to be certified by the Post Commission, you have to meet many, many hours of mandatory training every single year. And one of the training is classroom training, academic type training. There's firearms training, there's a defensive tactics training. But what I really like and what I always wanted to do is teach, this is the nerd in me, is the academic part. So I went and got certified to teach legal update, which to me is very important. So we just started in September. The fiscal year goes to May, and I'm doing that twice a month all the way through May. And I had 60 officers in the class this Monday from all around the area. And it's an 8-hour course, and all the new legal law, criminal statute, criminal procedure changes that have occurred since last year and/or refreshing from previous years. And all the refresher stuff is stuff that's basic, but is very important, right? Fourth Amendment, search and seizures, making sure you're not violating people's rights. First Amendment, which is very big, with obviously protecting people's First Amendment rights. So our job, Tedros, is constantly changing the expectations for us. So I've always wanted to be a teacher. When I was younger, I didn't talk about this, talking about being a police officer. I wanted to be a high school teacher and a hockey coach. That would have been my ideal job. Teach at the high school and then go coach hockey after. So this is kind of my way to get back in the classroom to teach adults, but it's also my segue. I think when eventually I do retire, I kind of want to do that really more. Not full-time, because that's not retirement, but part-time is to try to impart and try to continually teach and train police officers so at least they have the tools to do the right thing.
It's very obvious. As someone who's been teaching for 40 years, I could sense a teacher when I see one. And you're gifted, and it's very obvious. You're very loquacious, unafraid to speak and to analyze dispassionately. In fact, the city of Melrose is truly lucky to have a chief of police with academic background, most particularly an interest in psychology, a training in psychology from an excellent university. Now, let's go back to the ground. All places have their own local politics. What kind of relationship do you have with the city? Are you happy with the city? Is City Hall treating you well? Is the budget adequate? Or would you like to get more, particularly in this era of police defunding and so on and so forth? I can't help but worry for you sometimes because in order to train the best of the best, there will have to be a comfortable budget from which to draw so that you won't end up hiring mediocrity, which you are not interested in. You're interested in a blend of human goodness and also basic human skill, basic human intelligence. And hiring these types is not cheap. It's very expensive. That's what Harvard, that's why Harvard is one of the most successful universities in the world, because it has a very impressive budget, and it could draw, and it made its name by drawing from the best of the best. It may make mistakes here and there, but generally Harvard rarely makes mistakes because there is a budget with which it could really draw the best of the best.
Right.
Now, applying this to the city of Melrose, which by any measure, is a comfortable city. It's relatively speaking, a wealthy city. And that the budget reflects that, and is the budget adequate for the vision of policing that you have? That's a loaded question. It has many.
You just took the words right out of my mouth. That's a loaded question. And let me answer this honestly, while being very careful at the same time. So your first part of that question, how are the politicians treating me, and how's the city? Excellent. Excellent so far. And the reason why I say so far is because the people that I go to the chiefs meetings all the time. I just had a dinner with some local chiefs last night. We commiserate, we talk, about the various things that are going on in each department. And I'm still a relatively new chief. There's a lot of turnover in the Middlesex County. And they always ask, Kev, how's it going? How's the honeymoon going? Because the honeymoon's going to come to an end. I said, well, the honeymoon's still going. It's almost 2 years. And a lot of them are shocked. They're like, that's impressive. Usually it's over like that. Everything's all happy, and then it kind of goes south on you. So having said that, Mayor Broder was great. Mayor Broder hired me, did not run again. Mayor Grigoritis has been excellent. City Council's been great. I haven't had any problems, but so I'm very fortunate that, and it's the lines of, I could go on and on about this. We could talk an hour on this, but it's all about communication. It's all about having an open door policy on both ends, right? Because I've said this before, when we talk about budget, we talk about wanting things and needing things, and there's a little bit of difference in wants and needs. But if I don't have conversations, a lot of conversations with the community, the city council, the mayor, if I don't have those conversations and I only come and speak to them when I want something, or when the police department wants something or needs something, you're more likely than not going to get it. I mean, let's be honest. And I use the kind of analogy of a husband and wife, or a partner, or your boyfriend and girlfriend. If you never ever have communications and you never talk to them, and then you go one day say, I want to go buy new golf clubs, or I want to go on a vacation, let's go pay for it. They're probably less likely to cooperate with you. So my goal in the beginning was to, and it's easy for me because I like talking to people, is just, you have to have these conversations in honest ones. Can't dance around things. Just get right to the point. What's the problem? What do you need? What do you want? What can we fix? So it's been really good so far, but we haven't had a real test yet. And that's how I judge people. Back it up a little. When I talked about something bad happens in Ferguson, Missouri, or something bad happens in LA. How are they going to treat the Melrose police? That has nothing to do with the Melrose police. When we have a critical incident, when there's something that testing politicians, then I'll have a better understanding of where we stand. But I can only say from my limited time here, they've been very supportive of the police. You said we're a wealthy city. I think we're well off. The families that live here, I think we're lacking a huge tax base. We're very residential. We don't have industry. We don't have business. So the big challenge, and this is out of my league, this is more for the mayor and everybody else, and I like to stay in my lane. I always preach stay in my lane. But it's tough when you don't have that tax base, like Harvard, you said, has just a wealth of money, right? We all know that. Surrounding towns, even touching us, have a wealth of money coming in from corporations and taxes. And so they're able to do things. They can do more things than we can. But the key with me is we need to prioritize what we do have, and how do you allocate it? How do you allocate the money that you do have? What are your priorities in Melrose? And that's what I'm trying to work for. Could I don't want to get too far into it. I could use more personnel. I could use more, but the school could, there's not one department in the city that couldn't use more. But I know the administration's doing the best they can with what they have, but we need to grow somehow. And so we need to think out of the box. I do want to emphasize that the city supports us, and the city meaning current administration, but more importantly, the rest of the 30,000 people that live here. As you know, we're taxpayers. We just voted in the debt exclusion to fund public safety, 4 new buildings over an 8-year period. That to me told me that we're at least moving in the right direction, that the city, the constituents, the community support police. They support fire. We're going to have a brand new station in 2.5 years. I can't discount how important that's going to be for the men and women that work here for the long term, especially the younger guys and women. It shows them the city cares, and it's morale. That's going to help a lot. Money helps. Pay salary helps. Let's not beat around the bush. Where other agencies, Cambridge, right? Harvard, go figure. Their police department pays a lot of money. A lot of agencies are losing offices to Cambridge, for example. Or I won't name all the towns. So we have, as a city, and me as a chief, have to find many ways, certainly to make it enjoyable and good and fun and safe to work at a police station, but also get paid fairly and equitably. That's like the ideal situation. Have a good working environment, control what you can control, make work fun, have your bosses support the patrolmen, have me support the bosses, have me support the patrolmen, have me fight for them. Who wants to work for a guy that doesn't care about them? So, but how far does that go, Tedros? If you don't think you're paid fairly. So that's my challenge as a chief, to get my people paid fairly, but also create an environment in which they want to come. Now, what's the number? I made more where I came from. I took a pay cut, but I'm very happy. Money isn't everything, but money's a lot when you're a young guy and you get a family and you need money and you need to support, and you don't want to be working 80 hours on details every week to make that extra income. I get that. But what is the number? Quality of life versus money. Money's not everything. You can go to another job and get more money and hate your job and wish you went to the other one for less. So that's the challenge chiefs of police are facing, is that balance of paying them right, but making the job also enjoyable to come to. And it's hard. It's becoming a haves and a have-nots. So the larger paying departments, or the larger cities that have more money to allocate, we're losing officers to them. So how do we fix that? There's no easy answer. There's no easy answer to that.
Incredible, Kevin. Well, this will be my last question, and feel free to dodge it if the question
Sure.
in trouble. I don't want you to get in trouble. I like you very much, and I want you to stay in the city as our chief of police. In fact, one of my worries is that you're so good, from what I sense, that you may not stay with us for very long. Would I be correct in assuming that you may be looking around, or
No,
are you happy?
I'm not looking anywhere. I'm here. Like I said, I live here. I don't want to get into the thing about pay cut and all that stuff, because it's it's quality of life. It's quality of life. I'm enjoying what I do. I enjoy the people that work for me. I enjoy the people that I work for. When it's time to go, it's time to go. I'll know when it's time to go, but I'm not actively looking. I'm under contract until 2027, June of 27. So that's what is that? 3 years at least, 3 years or so. And we'll kind of cross that bridge where I have goals in mind. I have goals, and I have a lot of goals, not for me, for here, for what I want to bring us to. And I don't want to leave until I think I've accomplished a lot of them. Might not get to all of them, but no, I'm not going anywhere.
That's excellent. And I want the contract to be extended to at least 2037. If I'm still around, I want to hang out with you.
Well, I need to retirement at one point too, right?
Yeah.
That'll be Chiefs in 37, 10 more years. That'll be 13. No, I'm not going to be here in 2037. You can count that.
Well, what an honor and what a pleasure to have interacted.
Thank you.
I've thought with you for the last 50 minutes or so. Time just flew by. Any final comments that you would like to make to the city? My final comment is I would like you to thank all those officers whom you're training to continue being good, because they are good. I would like them to know that. Any final words coming from you?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, thank you for this opportunity to kind of get the message out there about what we do. And my final words would be, we're doing a good job. We're trying to do a good job. When we make mistakes with people. But we at least in Melrose, and we hold ourselves accountable. That's another thing. If we mess up, we handle it. But we also understand people make mistakes. Mistakes of the head can be fixed. Mistakes of the heart can't be fixed. We do what we do here, and we address it. And a lot of people, I think, across the Commonwealth, across the country, think that the police are, we're all corrupt and we're all taking care of our own. No, we're professionals. We hold all each other accountable. And as long as I'm here, we will do that. And that does not mean punishing people. What I often preach, discipline does not equal punishment. Discipline just means you see something that's wrong, address it. Do your job. You're a supervisor, do your job. And it might not be even the patrolman's fault, or it might not be the supervisor's fault. They might never been trained to do that. And until you're told what's expected of you, that's a failure of leadership. So we do a good job here. We're moving forward. And I'm very happy so far in the, a little under 2 years that I've been here.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. We will
You're
do
welcome.
several parts in the future. And whenever you have something to report, the Kiros Report is your home. And for my viewers, please subscribe to the Kiros Report in Patreon and YouTube. The Kiros Report is supported by the Hutchins Center at Harvard University. I thank you very much for giving us part of your precious time.